Gasps echoed through the room. No one could believe it. Even the judge froze as Will Smith walked in. Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following content is for educational and entertainment purposes only. These are the exact words from the federal courtroom during the Sean Diddy Combs trial, as reported by Inner City Press. No one expected him. The tension was thick. All eyes were on the next witness, until the back doors opened. Will walked in, completely alone. No announcement, no written statement. Just him. Until then, he had stayed quiet, even as his name filled headlines, leaks, and whispered recordings said to be too dark to share. But something had shifted. Maybe it was the rumors. Maybe it was the betrayal from those he once trusted. Or maybe it was that tape, played behind closed doors. Whatever the reason, Will had reached his limit. He wasn't stepping forward as a movie star. He stood there as a man who had seen too much and stayed quiet too long. And once he began to speak, no one in the courtroom was ready. What he said about Diddy, the parties, the control, the fear. It wasn't just shocking. It was a warning. The day had started like any other in the Diddy trial. Soft voices filled the air. Reporters sat ready. Lawyers whispered plans while waiting for the next witness. Then the side doors opened. Will Smith walked in, alone. No team. No warning. Some thought it was a mistake. Others thought it was just a stunt. But the way he walked in slowly, focused. None of that old Fresh Prince charm was there anymore. It was raw, real. You could feel it. The judge raised an eyebrow. Diddy, who'd been lounging with a smug look at the defense table, suddenly looked uneasy. Will went straight to the witness stand. No eye contact, not even a glance at Diddy. "I wasn't asked to come here today," Will began. "I asked if I could speak." The judge allowed it. And from that moment on, everything in the courtroom shifted. Because what Will was about to say wasn't in the headlines. It wasn't from leaked clips or gossip online. This was something that had followed him for years, something that started at a party no one was supposed to mention. "I've held this in for a long time," he said. "I've smiled on red carpets. I've won awards. I've made movies about doing the right thing. But none of that covers what I saw, what I went through, and who caused it." Then he turned, just a little, toward Diddy. "You did." Will told the courtroom it began like many Hollywood tales do, with an invitation. It came from someone they both knew. "I'd worked with this person before. The way they described it, it sounded like a normal party. Diddy's birthday. Nothing crazy. Just music, networking, a spot for celebrities to relax. I'd been to events like that, so I didn't think twice. But the moment Will showed up, he felt something wasn't right. It was this huge mansion up in the hills. Black SUVs lined the front. Security everywhere. The second I walked in, they took my phone," he said. "That should have been the first warning. They claimed it was to protect everyone's privacy, to keep the guests safe. But to him it felt different, like they didn't want anything seen, recorded, or remembered." He was led further inside. The lights were low. The music, quiet, though. Music was strange, rhythmic, almost like a trance. No visible cameras, but mirrors covered the walls. It felt like someone was always watching. Will said after a few drinks and light talk, Diddy came straight up to him. He said, "Now you're part of the family," with a smile that didn't feel friendly. It felt like control. Will followed him into a back room thinking they'd talk business. But what he saw next hit him hard. There were people performing, men, women, some faces he knew from movies and music. Some looked far too young. Others stood around watching like it was some kind of show. And Diddy? He was laughing, like it was all completely normal. Will paused, his throat tight. "I didn't know how to get out," he said. And that's the trap. Once you're in, you're in. A few days later, he got a call. Blocked number. All it said was, "Hope you had fun, Fresh Prince." Then it cut. He thought it was just a creepy joke until an envelope showed up at his office. No name. Inside was a flash drive. "I almost didn't check," he said. "But I did. And it was footage from that night. Me, sitting on a couch, clearly out of it. I don't remember feeling that gone, but there I was, laughing at something I couldn't even recall." Behind the camera, I heard Diddy's voice. "That's how we keep him." Will said the fear that hit him in that moment was like nothing he'd ever felt before. "I realized I wasn't invited to that party," he said. "I was brought in." That's when the control started. He began getting more invites, more parties. He didn't go. Then, out of nowhere, movie deals he was discussing vanished. Longtime contacts stopped returning calls. Then came the online talk, rumors that he was gay, unstable, unfaithful. "I knew what it was," he said. "It was pressure." Diddy didn't have to say a word. The message was clear: stay quiet or pay the price. So for years, Will kept quiet, smiled in interviews, ignored the gossip, focused on work. But every time someone else spoke out, Cassie, Dawn Richard, even when Meek Mill's name got dragged into it, he kept asking himself, "Why am I still silent?" He looked around the courtroom. Diddy didn't just hurt people's careers, he made them scared to tell the truth. And that, Will said, was why he finally came forward. He paused, looked at the jury, and leaned toward the mic. "It wasn't just a video," he said. "It was a leash." From then on, everything he did felt controlled. He said calls would come in through his agent. Invites to parties, meetings, projects. They kept coming. But when he said no, things started changing behind the scenes. I'd turned down a Diddy event, and the next week a project I'd been told was greenlit. Suddenly it wasn't, Will said. It didn't just happen once or twice. It became a pattern. Diddy didn't need to threaten anyone himself. He had people for that: PR teams, bloggers, producers. He knew exactly who to call. He could make trouble appear out of nowhere, and just as quickly, make chances disappear. Will shared one moment that stuck with him. In 2013, he was set to lead a big global campaign with a major luxury brand. "We were wrapping up the final talks," he said. "I'd already shot the first lookbook." Then, without warning, they dropped him. No reason, no explanation. 2 weeks later, another invite arrived, this time to a party. It was another Diddy event. When I said no again, the phone calls started. Gossip. Blogs ran oddly specific stories about me, things only someone close could have leaked. Will called it what it was: psychological warfare. "You start to think you're imagining things," he said. "But then you notice the patterns, the punishments, and you realize you're not paranoid, you're trapped." He told the court he knew other stars facing the same thing. "Some are still silent," he said. "Some have contracts that stop them from talking. Some are just scared they'll be exposed too." Then he turned to Diddy and said clearly, "You didn't just collect people, you controlled them." And the room understood. But Will didn't stop at the personal damage. He said Diddy's reach went far beyond music. It was woven into the structure of Hollywood itself. You couldn't step onto a major stage without brushing past someone he helped place there, Will explained. He talked about a charity gala in 2016. Behind the curtains, powerful people from music, film, politics, and tech were there. And all of them? They were thanking Puff, like he was the one holding the whole thing together. I saw an executive from a streaming service hand him a USB drive and whisper, "Only you have the final cut." Will didn't reveal what was on it, but he said it, confirmed what he'd feared. Diddy wasn't just making connections, he was controlling the gates. He described seeing actors, rappers, public figures act strangely submissive around Diddy. Laughing too hard, agreeing with everything, always. trying to please him. I realized most of them weren't his friends, Will said. They were survivors. He admitted that one reason he stayed silent for so long was the fear of being blacklisted forever. But then it hit him. He'd already been quietly pushed out. There was no list, no public cutoff. Just whispers, doubt, and doors that stopped opening. He said the only reason he didn't vanish completely was because of his fans. That's what Puff couldn't control, Will said. The people. Over time, he started seeing it all more clearly. He went back, looked at old videos, party photos, press events, and again, Diddy was there. Even if he wasn't in the room, his presence was. His power shaped everything. And then, Will said, came the moment that changed it all. His voice lowered. Deeper, steady. I stayed silent for 20 years, he said. I kept telling myself it wasn't real or I kept telling myself it wasn't real, that it couldn't have happened to me. But then the audio started coming out. Will said when he first heard about secret tapes being played in court, he didn't believe it. Then I got a call, he said. Not from a reporter, not from the prosecution, from someone I once trusted. They told him, Will, you're on one of those tapes. They played it yesterday. People are talking. He said it felt like the ground vanished beneath him. I didn't even know a tape like that existed, Will said. But once I believed it might be real, everything else started making sense. He stayed up that night going over everything. The party, the blackout, the envelope, the blocked calls. It was all part of a system, he said. And I was one of its victims. He said fear wasn't the thing that broke him. It was shame. I realized if I didn't speak now, my silence would become my legacy, and I couldn't live with that. My kids will see these headlines. My grandkids might too. He said he reached out to the prosecutors himself. I told them, I'm ready. Ask anything. Then he turned to the jury. I wasn't just pressured. I was tricked, recorded, and used. He looked at Diddy, again, this time with a sharper edge. And you knew exactly what you were doing. Will closed his eyes for a moment like he was bracing himself to relive what he'd buried. When they asked if I wanted to hear the tape, he said, I paused. But I knew I had to. They played it in private. No press, no jury. Just the judge, the lawyers, and Will. I heard myself laughing, Will said. Will said slowly, that laugh, it wasn't real. It was empty. He sounded off. Drunk, no, drugged. He described the background noise on the tape. Soft music, quiet voices, sometimes a cheer or shout. Then he heard Diddy, clear as day, say something like, that's how we break them in, and then he heard his name. They were saying my name, he said, while doing things I can't even bring myself to repeat. He said it wasn't just embarrassing. It was terrifying, Will told the court. There's a big difference between being ashamed and being stripped of your humanity. That tape, it took something from me. His voice cracked for the first time. He lowered his eyes, took a breath, and kept going. I never agreed to be recorded. I never said yes to any of that. But Diddy recorded it. And he kept it. Maybe to use. Maybe just because he could. Will said he spent years confused about his own anxiety. He'd freeze up when certain names were said. He had panic attacks during simple interviews. Now I know, he said. I wasn't losing it. I was remembering something I didn't want to remember. He said listening to that audio made everything clear. How he'd been used, tricked, watched, but what shook him the most wasn't what he heard. It was what I couldn't remember, he said. Then Will looked at the jury and asked, if Diddy wasn't powerful, how could someone like me be silenced for 20 years without even knowing it? And by the time Will's testimony reached the public, it was too late. Hollywood couldn't stop the truth. The court clips had already gone viral. Before the bailiff could even call reset, hashtags exploded. Will speaks, freak off tape, Diddy file, And for the first time, the public saw Will not as a polished star, but as a survivor. Will said, "I knew once I spoke, things would get ugly, but I didn't know how fast." He told how within 24 hours of testifying, he lost 2 brand deals, and a studio stopped promoting a film he had already finished. But he said none of that mattered. "I lost something more valuable years ago. My voice." The calls started coming, quiet ones, texts from actors, producers, even directors. Some thanked him. Others warned him. One said, "You don't know who you just declared war on." Another said, "You've made yourself radioactive." Will named a few people without giving details, saying legal reasons stopped him, but he nodded when asked about names like Kevin Hart, Meek Mill, and Lucian Grange. "This isn't just Diddy's problem," he said. "It's an industry built on silence. Everyone's trading in that currency." He also said he believed others had dirt on him. "I know after this, more footage might come out. They'll try to make me look unstable, broken. Let them," he said. "I'm not here to protect myself anymore. I'm here to protect the truth." Will told the court he expected backlash, denials, and legal teams saying he was lying. "They'll say I'm bitter. They'll say I'm hiding something. But I ask you this. If I was lying, why wait this long? Why now? When I have more to lose than ever." Will ended that part of his testimony with a line that silenced the courtroom. Sometimes the truth comes late, but it still hits like thunder. For his final statement, the judge allowed Will to speak, directly to Diddy. He stood up from the witness chair, took a few steps closer, and locked eyes with him. "You built an empire on manipulation," Will began. "You called it success, culture, love, but all you really built was fear." Diddy didn't respond. He sat motionless, his lawyer whispering in his ear. Will didn't flinch. "I saw what you did to those girls. I saw what you did to me. I heard the things you said about me when you thought I wasn't listening. You broke people for sport." Then Will reached into his pocket and pulled out an old photo. "This was me in 2004, right before the first party. That's the man I used to be." He held it up for the court to see. "I haven't seen him in years." Turning to the jury, he said, "If you think this is just about Cassie, or me, or one night in some mansion, you're missing the bigger picture. This is about a network of power designed to silence the truth. And if we don't tear it down, it will keep going." Facing Diddy one last time, Will said, "You once said nobody parties like Diddy. Well, nobody lies like you, either." He returned to the stand, gathered his things, and left the courtroom without a backward glance. Diddy sat pale and unblinking, his fingers trembling. For the first time in decades, he wasn't in control. When Will Smith stepped down from the witness stand, he didn't look like a man who had won. He looked like someone who had finally spoken his truth. Finally, Will stopped running. The courtroom fell into a heavy silence, unsure how to breathe again. Even the judge looked shaken. Some jurors wiped tears from their eyes. For the first time in the entire trial, Diddy appeared defeated, with nothing left to say. Will ignored the press as he left. No waves, no poses, just a steady walk out of the courthouse, head held high but shoulders burdened by 20 years of pain. When asked later if he felt relieved, he said simply, "Relief isn't the right word. It's just finished." Outside, the world was only beginning to react. Hollywood went into a quiet panic. Executives canceled meetings. Agencies froze deals. Directors and producers who once praised Will were suddenly fielding urgent calls. Those who once called him